totally fell asleep. And it was great. And the just that she had this Nancy Pelosi while she was the minority leader. Go sit and listen to those strategy sessions at the table. It's just a great education thing about leadership. Yeah, my politics are much more progressive than most of them. But that learning experience, I think, is going to be, I don't think you can apply that. Yeah. Right. And how they work. Oh, yeah. Hey, you know what's funny? If you're not afraid to click a mouse for a PowerPoint presentation, get in the meetings you should not be in. Like they're really, there'd be, so senior Democratic caucus leadership meetings when everybody's too scared to run their PowerPoint. And this almost top secret meeting, just looking through slides and listening, like seriously listening, like in the basement. And just kind of shaking your head like I should not be in this right now, but they're just scared of their own technology. Oh yeah, I didn't never talk, right? If you follow that wall, just take it all the way down to the right. It was, and so the other thing is, yes. The funny thing is, yes you do.
I didn't like really, I mean, it's funny. I know.
Access to State Department communication system, so you can recognize systems and but I didn't really have any use for it, but they just because they had my job. They had to go through the process to get a secret clearance. Never used it for anything. But during that, after I got it, the background check, even I don't have access to it. Chinese were so like I'm sure that there are like folks in China because they have my information, like talk my fingerprints. I was safer before I got my security.
That's what I was thinking.
Really glad you updated me.
That blew my mind.
Yes.
But they do that so many times too. They use that nose thing. It's like what's that
Right.
I don't remember
Good. That's right. We're pushing really hard to get the other version which we're going to find out about this Sunday. Oh yeah. The Justice Democrats. We're already looking at Justice Democrats. Yeah, I like that. And I feel like that's oh yeah, we sent the faxes. That's amazing. Yeah, it's so good.
I read this great story in the Wall Street Journal.
Right. Right. Let me tell you what the great thing about that is. Staffers hate faxes. So no, that's the great thing about it because we have to read them and like manually enter the information into the computer. And it's like, yeah. So good. That's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you
Right.
You know what I mean?
You gonna meet Diego?
But have you met Diego yet? It blows my mind. You know, something.
Right, all the time.
And the re-election too.
Right.
Oh.
Right.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
The first letter I sent yesterday.
I can't.
Hope I don't find out.
My son's like a church or something.
It's amazing.
I'm a good letter.
Right, right. That's good.
Yeah, what I
Do you care for any water? Oh, no. Okay, are you all done here? Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
I'm here on Thursday and part of the whole Oh, you're on the company. Right there. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, they're working on opening part of but right now with the last information that they did. No.
If I turn around, I also
Yeah, definitely is. You guys make money on Ireland. That's absolutely.
How are you doing, young man? My name is Shannon.
John.
John, Trish, Claudia.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Sorry, are you the documentarian?
I'm from a neighboring district, and I have a blog, and it's involved. It does some politics, gets into politics there now. Actually, let me retract it. On a daily basis, I have something about Donald Trump in my blog.
The Antichrist?
In fact, the day is Thursday. I always have an article about your friend, the handgun. It highlights one of the great joys that people encounter when they happen to have a handgun, when maybe it wouldn't have been such a good idea. And so I thought I'd come out here and think it was close by. I just live across the borderline in the District 20.
Good. Have you met Derrick before?
I met him when he came in, and I sit his ear for maybe 30 minutes or something like that. Got a lot of information on his background. You with the campaign?
We did some block walking for him. I'm a member of TX21 Indivisible, so we do not endorse. But we are going to support. We have an embarrassment of riches as far as our candidates.
Yeah, that's my point too. I mean, if I give money to Joaquin Castro, you've got it in the back.
Got it in the back. But the thing that impressed me about Derrick is one of the first things I asked him was, why are you going to get into this mess? And he says, I got a lot of board. So that said to me that Derrick is not thinking about 2 months from now, a year from now. He's thinking 2 years from now. What kind of world are we going to be? And I'm so impressed with his authenticity.
You know what? It was probably the smartest thing I ever
Well, and we've walked him over the coals, as we have all of them. We've told them all, you bring brains, backbone, and balls to the table, then we'll talk.
I know. Gosh.
And you're going to be great about your accountability, your accessibility, your transparency, your honesty, and your decency. And that's how we're going to support you. And we will eat our own if we have to make sure that we're the right candidate. As I said, we are so fed up with shady politics, we're done with it. We're done with it.
My position, I'm just going to kind of sit it out and see who gets who makes it past the longer. And then if somebody has a shot to take over the spot,
We're going to support, we're going to give
I'll put some money behind it.
Yep. But we're gonna support whoever gets through that primary, but we're gonna support him because we just do whatever we can to help any and all.
Who else is running?
We've got Joseph Cox.
I don't know anything about him.
He's military, former military business owner, entrepreneur. He takes PAC money. Elliot, big fat, very quiet, soft-spoken attorney. They're all very capable, very competent. And then Mary Wilson, she is a minister. We did have Chris Perry, but Chris has decided he jumped over to District 25. Chris is going to be a 4-3 regular. Chris is a baby-faced man. Chris Perry. An amazing young man.
Everybody, thank y'all for coming tonight. I'm really excited to see y'all. I'm sorry to interrupt the food and the conversations that we're having. I'm just going to give y'all a quick talk, and then we can go right back to socializing. And if you're not here for the political event, please feel free to ignore us because we're going to be talking politics for a few minutes. For the folks that haven't met me before and came for the first time tonight, thank y'all for coming. It means a lot to us that you're willing to roll the dice on a candidate you haven't spoken to before and come out and spend a little part of your time on a weeknight with us. So thank you. I'll briefly talk about myself and then talk about what's going on in our country for a second. I'm a former congressional staffer. I worked on Capitol Hill for the top Democrats on armed services, rural and agriculture issues, and House leadership. And what that's done is given me a little bit of a perspective about how a really high-functioning office in a Congress should work. And I know I don't have to tell the people in this area right now that we don't have that right now. We have a member of Congress right now who has been there for 30 years, who's decided he's retiring, and I think, you know, the hard part about that is he's ruined my favorite applause line when I start a speech when I'm like, who's ready to get rid of Lamar Smith? And suddenly he's ready to get rid of Lamar Smith. But I've worked in small business. I've owned and operated a small retail store in the Austin area and sold it. I've worked in nonprofits since. The last place I worked was the Safe Alliance, which runs the domestic violence and children's shelter in town. Prior to that, I worked for the Center for Public Policy Priorities, which advocates for working class folks at the state level to try to make sure that our state legislators don't, you know, do the same thing that they're doing to them at the national level right now. And, you know, the reason I got into this race is I have a 3-year-old son, and every year he's been alive has been the hottest year on the planet. And, you know, when the 2 months before he was born, I looked at my wife and I said, oh my gosh, you know, we've been trying for years to have a kid, and this year the permafrost is starting to go. What are we going to do? And so I became a climate change activist for a couple of years, trying to get out ahead of that and educate people. And when we moved back to Texas to raise Henry, we just landed in Lamar Smith's district on accident because that was where we could find affordable rent in Austin, and I think we could move quickly. And over the course of that experience, this was before Indivisible and Our Revolution, this was in the middle of the 2016 primary, I started doing the kind of Indivisible thing as a former staffer. I knew how to really annoy congressional staffers, like my former self, so I started writing and calling and showing up at the office and trying to get their attention, and just found a brick wall, could not get through. And so I started doing things like organizing rallies and protests and trying to influence in that way. And not only did that not get through him, he ended up endorsing Trump as one of the first people to endorse Trump. And so that spurred me to do a bunch of anti-Trump organizing. So I just kept climbing the activism ladder until suddenly I'm standing at the pod running for Congress because we got to do something to stop these guys. And I know there's a lot of folks in the room. We have a great contingent of Indivisible here. Thank you, ladies, for what you're doing. I think you're probably more responsible for Lamar Smith retiring than any of us that are running in this race. I think Lamar Smith looked up and saw a 6-month to a year process of having y'all in his face the whole time and decided he'd rather go play with grandkids. I really do. I think that the influence y'all have had on this race is enormous. I think Tom Wakely's here. We should also acknowledge Tom Wakely's contribution making Lamar Smith retire. He demonstrated in the last cycle that somebody can run on progressive values and knock a couple of pegs off of Lamar Smith's numbers. That was phenomenal. Tom's running for governor now, so y'all should talk to him about his race as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you for what you've done. It's amazing. And what you're doing right now is amazing. We need progressives at every moment, every spot on the ballot. So thank you. You know, I'm going to talk for a minute about what's happening right now. Because that's kind of the mode we're in, right? We're in this constant social media feed of what has Trump done in the last 30 seconds that's endangering our country. But after that, I want to take a step back and talk about the next 20 years of this country. Because that's what we need is folks who are in Washington thinking about the future. You know, to talk about what's happening right now, you know, I went on a Thanksgiving break to my hometown, and there's no cell phone reception where I was, and so I had this kind of like blessed vacation for 2 seconds from what was going on with the president and in Congress. You know, watched some football games for a minute, and then when we drove back into cell reception, I learned that the president had been nominated for Time Magazine Person of the Year, apparently, which was a total lie. And that he started off his day today and yesterday tweeting white supremacist Islamophobic videos from a neo-Nazi group in Great Britain. And to me, that's a national emergency. When our president is so unhinged that he will tweet things that are basically the equivalent of a Ku Klux Klan video from Great Britain, 3 of them in a row, and not only will not apologize when it turns out that they were fake videos, that they were not factual videos, he will double down and say, well, it doesn't matter that they weren't real, the threats were real. Well, the real threat here is the erosion of the idea of truth and the idea of integrity and governance. And we need people to go to Washington with that in mind, that our job is to challenge them every day and assert that the truth has claims on our actions. It's not something that gets thrown out the window when it's inconvenient for political moments. It's something that has claims on our action. When scientists tell us that climate change is going to ruin our future, that has a claim on our action. When people tell us that automation is about to wipe out 30% of the jobs in the next 13 years, that has a claim on our action. When the CBO says that this tax bill is going to kick 13 million people off of their health care just so people can get a private jet exemption on their taxes, that has a claim on our action. And the claim on our action is that we look at these folks in Washington and we realize they are not there for our future and that we do something about it. So I know a lot of y'all are already very deep into that mode. We also have somebody who I want to recognize and try to put you on the spot. Tell everybody your name for a second. Your first name's fine. Jack. Jack is going to vote in his first election this year. So on one hand, thank you, and on the other hand, sorry. Our bad. We are so proud of what you're about to do. And he was talking to me earlier, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this. And he said, we're mad. All my friends are mad, and all my friends are going to vote. And the reason that's important is the politics of the last 20 years has failed everybody who's entering the workforce in the next 20 years. For 30 years, folks like Lamar Smith have wasted the time that scientists have given us to deal with things like climate change. 20 years ago, when people were warning about what automation and artificial intelligence were going to do to the job market, we could have done something about it, but we haven't. The situation we're in now is that in the next 13 years, 30% of the jobs could go away. Faster than we can retrain people, the jobs could just go away. And what that means is, somebody asked me today whether I think we're in a new Gilded Age. And I think that yes, we're in a new Gilded Age, but I don't think that quite adequately describes the problem. We are in a moment where the rich have accrued enormous benefits and advantages over the working class in our politics. That's a fact. After Citizens United, the money that has flown into our politics has allowed folks who have a lot to have as much as they want as long as they can lobby and fund campaigns for us. But it doesn't quite adequately describe the depth of the problem because, in the next 30 years if that automation wave does happen, we do lose those jobs. Pressure on wages is going to be fierce and it's going to be downward. And so if we don't do things like establish a floor for our wages, we're going to see intense unemployment and intense wage slavery, where essentially you're working for starvation wages. That's going to happen at exactly the same time that scientists are telling us that we may blow our carbon budget for staying under catastrophic climate change. If those two things happen at the same time, you will see massive unemployment at the same time our country will have trouble feeding itself. Before we even talk about the automation part of it, James Hansen was already warning that if climate change takes hold at just a 2-degree level, we could see changes fast enough and severe enough that could make our country ungovernable. That's a very geeky way of saying a failed state, because the number of people that will have to move away from the major cities because of rising oceans will be so fast and so huge that we won't be able to compensate for it by getting them in safe housing or jobs or any kind of government benefits, and it'll be internally displaced people in our own country. But when you add to that up to 30% unemployment, that is a catastrophe that freedom and prosperity cannot withstand. The good news about that is I painted a really bleak picture of the possible future. That's the future if we do nothing. That's the future if we keep going down this road where corporations get everything, the working class gets nothing out of Congress. We do things like pass tax legislation that gives private jet tax benefits but ends the student loan interest deduction. Where we do things like give a tax break for sparkling wine but raise taxes on people going to grad school by 400%. That's the future we're headed for. unless we stop it. But if we make the turn and say we're going to do things like provide college for all, Medicare for all, a $15 an hour minimum wage, take urgent action on climate change, and that piece actually at the end has the potential to save us from that crisis I talked about. The folks who are doing the studies on this automation wave say that there are just a few things we can do, and they're very urgent and very deep, but if we do those things, we can weather what's coming. Those things are deep investments in infrastructure and in the green economy, and then to create jobs from those endeavors that pay $15 an hour or more. That'll provide enough demand in the economy that will have an upward pressure on wages and also spur new kinds of jobs that we don't even know about yet. We have to make sure that benefits like your health insurance aren't tied to your job, because your job will be very unstable in that situation. So things like Medicare for all are essential, so you can have health care no matter where you are. Having a $15 an hour minimum wage floor is essential. Essentially, the platform we've been pushing from the progressive side of the aisle right now is the solution to that crisis. So if you do things like I said, $15 an hour minimum wage, Medicare for all, climate change action, college for all, mid-career retraining, things like paid sick leave, those kinds of benefits. If you put that kind of floor under people, we can get through this crisis that's coming up. But what that means is, and I hate to put pressure on you right now, we have to win this cycle. We do not have the time to waste on any of these crises to wait out through an entire Trump presidency and have him set us further and further back. It is essential that we take back Congress this time. And the good news about that is the dynamics are all cutting our way. We have a progressive wave happening in this country that has seen victories in Virginia, Georgia, New York, Seattle, down in from the city council level all the way up to the congressional and gubernatorial level. Those dynamics are taking hold in this district. Indivisible is a great example. In the Texas 21 Indivisible group, I would say we probably have the most organized indivisible group in the country. I think that's absolutely true. I don't know if you've heard this yet, I've talked to your national organizers in DC. They agree. Y'all are at least in the top 3 groups in the country for size and organization. Y'all are phenomenal. We have groups like Our Revolution that are organizing. I mean, y'all have done an amazing amount of work, I have to say. It's incredible. When you get into NPR for actions happening in Kerrville, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. So thank you for what you're doing. Groups like Our Revolution are organizing on the ground. The Democratic clubs are organizing on the ground. I was talking to you earlier and talking about the energy I'm seeing just in each of the county parties. The first place I went on this race in April was the Comal County Democratic Party in New Braunfels. It was a standing room only meeting on a weeknight in April. The first person I sat next to, I didn't realize it was the county chair, and I mentioned that I was thinking about running for Congress, and just before I got the word out of my mouth, she threw me in front of the crowd. And the crowd, I guess I was running for Congress at that point. But, you know, you do that in every single county and you'll get the same response. Gillespie County had a 200-person fundraiser for their county party a couple of months ago. It pulled in the lieutenant gubernatorial candidate and the head of the Democratic Party. In Austin, you can pack a room out any night of the week. In San Antonio, you can pack a room out any night of the week. You're there to fight for progressive values. The energy is all on our side this time. But what that means is we have to have the organizations in place to capitalize on that and turn those into votes. So I'm going to talk to you for a second about our campaign, and I'll let you get back to your conversation. Our campaign has been out there since April, knocking on doors, making phone calls, sending out tweets and Facebook updates and getting in touch with voters face-to-face, person-to-person. What that has allowed us to do is build a 10-county organization that's ready to capitalize on that wave. The trick is we're running into crunch time now, and we need to raise funds. So we are not taking any corporate PAC money. That's essential, I think, in this race, so that people know who we're answering to. But that means that we rely on your donations. So Katina's in the back. She's our fundraising lead on the race. If you're able to donate $5, $10, $27, if you want to do what they call a birdie, we'll take that. Those funds will be put to use immediately doing things like printing literature, funding door-knocking operations and phone banking. Those kind of things, instead of big expensive TV ads, are how we're going to win the race. If we keep that up, nobody's going to be able to catch us. We've been able to leverage the support we built by that method of campaigning into endorsing endorsements from the Bexar County Young Democrats. We won the Bexar County straw poll for the Democratic Party in our race handily. We have won the Justice Democrats endorsement nationally. We won the Democracy for America endorsement nationally. Bill McKibben's come out in support of our race. We are on our way here to capturing national attention for this race. That's what it's going to take. We can't do it without it. So if you can donate, that's amazing. If you can sign up to volunteer, that's even better because we can turn that manpower immediately into voter contests. We can't do it without you. Please sign up or talk to Katina about donating.
Tap into people like Jack, young people that are going to
Yes.
be getting the vote out because I still
stand next
hear
to Jack.
so much out. They don't want to vote because they don't think that their voice is heard.
So last night I had a great night where I went from Kerrville, from a union protest out in front of the VA, to San Antonio for a union event, then straight to the University Democrats at the UT campus. And I think both at the UT campus, at the UTSA campus, at the Trinity campus, student groups are organizing in a really fierce and urgent way. It was a Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, and there were probably 60 people at the University Democrats meeting at UT. We've got a student group in San Marcos set up, a student group in St. Edward set up. On the colleges, at least, we are very organized. We are relying on the energy of young folks who understand what's at stake. And I'll tell you, the way that they look at the race when we talk to them, I think is very simple. They understand that the people who are willing to show up right now are the only thing standing between the future and the fire. That previous generations and previous iterations of politics have been so far behind the curve that there's nobody left on the bench. We're out of time, and if we don't get it done this cycle, it's not getting done. And if we can't win with this kind of progressive win behind us now, we're going to have a really tough time in 2020. So the urgency is really there. They understand what's at stake, and they understand how politics has failed them. And the great thing about it is they're taking politics over. And that, to me, is really encouraging. The young Democrats in Texas, both from the late high school level all the way up to where they cut you off in the 40s, like when you hit 40 they cut you off. I'm still a young Democrat for the next 3 years, so I'm hoping to age out in office here. But I will say, that's where a lot of the energy is. And that's really exciting in this district because we actually have a really young district. The millennial age group, so the 25 to 34 age group in this district is actually the largest age demographic in the district right now. The second largest is the demographic 10 years immediately before. So it's a very young district. It's a group of folks that understand that when you're graduating from college, you're walking straight into a rigged system where you have an enormous amount of college debt, minimum wages are too low so you don't get paid enough. If you're lucky enough to get health care coverage, which you have to be really lucky to get health care coverage in your first job, you're probably not going to have sick leave, so if you do get sick and follow doctor's orders, you're probably going to lose your job in your job. They understand when they walk into that buzzsaw that the current policies aren't going to work. And we need things like we've talked about already, those progressive policies. So their energy's really high. And so that gives me a lot of hope. The hope for the future is sitting right next to you right now. The folks who will show up on a weeknight and also who will show up and do things like knock on doors or make phone calls or just talk to your neighbors about politics. That simple act is so powerful. If we all band together, we can save the future from this fire. We got to do it right now. So I appreciate you being here right now. I want to thank you for coming tonight. I'm going to let you get back to your conversation, but does anybody have any questions they want to ask before we just start talking to each other real quick?
No, but can I make a statement?
Oh,
Go ahead,
you
John.
got a question?
Go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead, make a statement.
Right, yeah.
Brace yourself.
All right. I'm stealing myself. Shannon, Shannon, then you.
Just so you all know,
Right.
I am college educated. I speak other languages. But when this started, I honestly did not know what an MOC was. I thought it was the beginning of a Disney song. M-O-U-S-E. The election changed me as a human being. Okay? When I first met Derrick, we confronted all of our candidates and we told them, you've got to bring brains, backbone, and balls to the table.
We're over it.
Okay? And you're going to be graded on your accountability, your accessibility, your honesty, your integrity, because we're done with shady politicians. I asked this young man, why are you willing to jump into this cesspool of politics And the first thing out of his mouth was, I've got a little boy. So Derrick impressed me with the fact that he is not thinking 2 months down the road, 6 months down the road. This kid is thinking 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. He's desperately wanting to leave his child a better world to live in. One of the things I have learned through my friend Trish and joining Indivisible, the power is with us. The power is with us, and we need to reclaim it. But to finally have a candidate that has the integrity that he demonstrates is profound. He knows that we're going to rake him over the coals. He's going to be held accountable for every breath he takes, and he's willing to stand up and accept that. So we could not be more impressed. We're not allowed to endorse, but like I said, we have an embarrassment of riches of candidates. But this one literally blew my mind. When he's thinking of the kind of world he wants to leave his little boy, if we can keep him from sticking stuff up his nose.
She's a Facebook friend, so she's been following Henry's medical challenges.
His little boy Henry sticks things up his nose that have to be extracted by medical professionals.
I'm not exaggerating it, yeah.
No. But just to please don't lose sight of the fact that when we have integrity, we need to run with it. We need to run with it like a pit bull. Oh, yeah. Okay? Because we literally have the Antichrist in the White House. Okay? And this man has given us hope. So, just consider that when you're making your decisions, when you're talking to other people. If integrity means anything to you, please share that. Please share how important that is. Okay?
Thank you. That means
You should
very
just
much.
have her do all your
I know, like, I don't even know why I even bothered to get up and talk. So when we first met, I'll talk about that for a second. We were at San Marcos at a candidate forum back when there were like 99 people in this race.
Yes.
And so there were a lot of people, like literally a chairs all the way across the stage.
All across the stage.
So this has been a long process to get it down. This is just the primary.
This is the primary.
I know.
Yes.
And I'm actually really thankful that after the primary, it'll just be us, one other person. That sounds like a luxury. But we've gone through a long process. We built support day by day, but it's just folks like you and folks who are willing to stand up and name the candidate of their choice. Choice is important because if you don't make the choices, then you make it. So if you have a candidate you support, you should get out there and swing for them. Whether it's us or anybody else at any level on the ballot, your neighbors need to know who you're backing because they're looking for guidance on good things. So if we're that person, please tell your friends. So thank you. And then you had a question.
I have this list of your talking points, and I'd like for you to put, it would be nice if you could put the meat on all of these bones.
Okay.
But let me start off with one statement. You talk about global warming. I have a degree in physics somewhere back in the past, and I've been studying this stuff for decades.
Right.
We're hosed, okay? You can stop mining coal and pumping oil today, we're still hosed. You're gonna have to look for some way to ameliorate the consequences. And so when you go to Congress, that's what you need to be talking about. Raising the bridges, putting up dikes to keep the sea out, and stuff like that, because it's going to happen. All right, now that, let's just take one of your points. I don't want you going into all of them. Fight income equality, for example. Put some meat on that.
So one thing is, at a very basic level, is raising the minimum wage. So that's the first thing, because we're in an economy right now where it's a trickle-up economy. That if we're not paying people enough, not only are we immiserating huge numbers of people, we're also making sure that they end up on government safety net resources. Like Walmart's a great example. They're paying food stamp wages. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that we need to be a country that puts the government on the side of the working class instead of the very upper classes. And that means we have to back organized labor. That's the other piece of the puzzle. Organized labor and education.
A specific thing. What legal action would be taken, what law would be passed, or what government?
We need to repeal these right to work laws.
All right, repeal. Does the federal government have the ability to do that?
We can definitely repeal Taft-Hartley. We can make sure that we enforce the strength of the Davis-Bacon Act. We can make sure that we don't pass these laws that they're pushing right now that would remove your right to have union dues funded through your paycheck. There's a lot we can do. But the other thing we need to do is trust busting. And the reason I think that's important in income inequality, if you look at people's likelihood of working in a small firm or the firm that they owe over time, it's declining. And the only way to really build wealth in this country, if you're not like in finance, is to own your own business. It's typically one of the main paths to prosperity. But if you're, and I've been in this situation as a mom and pop operator for a retail store in Austin. If you're right down the street from a big box competitor like Walmart or somebody like that that has no interest in paying good wages, and they have no interest in not extracting unfair advantages from their suppliers, they'll just undercut your prices and wait for you to go out of business. They don't care if they make a profit today. And that is a way that monopolies abuse unfair advantages in the marketplace. Walmart's not a monopoly, but it has those large style advantages that illustrate the point. So those kinds of getting back to the idea that competitive markets, not just quote-unquote efficiency, is a social good that we have to support. And that's one way to address it. But I mean, there are a lot of them. The most important one, I think, is to make sure that we get the wages on the very bottom up, because we just don't pay people enough at the very basic level, and that depresses wages all across the board.
Raise the national minimum wage.
Right, that's one.
That's something very specific.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. But if you had a question, did I answer your question, Adam?
Oh yeah, I could get into all of these, but I'll only do one.
Yeah, we can talk later if you want. We can keep going. Definitely.
So, do you know if you and a lot of other Democrats are trying to push more internet neutrality?
Yes, I didn't even mention net neutrality. I think I only can pack so many aneurysms into one speech, but I'll talk about net neutrality because it's critical, and I'm glad you brought it up. And I'm going to pair it with another issue, which is the sale of your browsing data, because that's also a travesty that's happening. Right now, Ajit Pai is the head of the FCC. He is currently planning to end the free and open internet by repealing the common carrier restrictions that President Obama placed on the ability of these telecom companies to basically create winners and losers in the internet economy by privileging certain content and other content. So basically, imagine the situation we're trying to avoid, just to illustrate the point. Verizon owns Yahoo. Imagine if Verizon forced you to use Yahoo as your free search engine, but if you wanted to use Google, you had to pay more. That's the kind of situation that they have in countries like Portugal, where they don't have these kinds of protections for the free and open internet. Now imagine you're trying to create an online business, but Amazon, because they own all the servers, or they get into the telecom business, can strangle you until you agree to use their platform. That's the kind of thing they do now, but they're trying to translate that into the telecom. We have to fight that tooth and nail. And, you know, Ajit Pai's out there saying that, oh, these restrictions are new, and, you know, the Clinton era had the right idea. Hulu and Netflix and every modern internet service you can think of did not exist prior to that. And if, you know, you're in an area where you're trying to bring an innovation into the marketplace, net neutrality can kill that. They can, and when they pair that with the idea that they can sell your browsing data. That's another thing that happened under the current Congress. They have allowed telecom providers to sell your browsing history to companies that want to advertise to you. But they can also use that to compete against you if you try to start a business. So I don't know who woke up one day and decided, I wish my member of Congress would sell my browsing data in a way, by the way, that if you use incognito windows or things like that, then it won't work. They'll still be able to sell your browsing data because they see it from the provider end and not your browser history. There's almost no defense against it. And when you pair that with this ending of neutrality, you're heading us towards a Portugal-like situation where they sell packages of internet access the same way they sell you a crappy cable package. Like that's like the way you have to pick your cable package. Imagine if the entire internet was broken. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants the cable situation we have now. And so we have to fight that tooth and nail. Any actions we can take in Congress to stop that, I will take. I think we have to treat the internet like a utility. And if these guys keep it up, we might want to treat it like a public utility. Because companies like Comcast have taken, over 8 years I think, Comcast itself has taken $21 billion in government subsidies. And now they're trying to pull the ladder up kind of. and keep the people who funded that success that they have from being able to equally access the internet and activate the state of it. So I think you're going to see a lot of push from the Democrats to stop it. I don't know if we'll be successful in time for the next election, but next election we can go right back at it. Or next election.
I got a question for you. Message Derrick, right? So you got who you are, right? Doesn't matter your message. You got the best message. Right. You got the best. President Obama was a great president all the time, but he had a good message, okay? They know, no one knew us. You want to get elected, okay?
Right.
No matter what you are, people know who you are, okay? They have to.
Right.
How are you going to get your message out there, okay? Across this district, okay? Which overall is kind of how are you going to get out there so people know who you are?
Right.
Since at this point in time, overall, to win. Because you get the best decisions in the world, and no one knows who you are, okay? But how are you going to get it out there? How are you going to get that message out there in detail?
Right. So the answer to that is twofold. One is you have to be willing to wear yourself out physically and go everywhere all the time. So we're trying to do that with me personally. So for example, yesterday I started the day in Austin, drove to Kerrville for a rally outside the VA, drove to San Antonio, went back to Austin to speak to a group. Today I started in Austin, came here, we'll be going back for other events after this. And we're just setting that kind of pace. So as many places as we can get me physically, we're going to do that. I'm also, when I'm not doing that, either knocking on doors or making phone calls to people personally. But there's only so much that a candidate can do personally. So we have to rely on a great campaign staff, which we're building. We're bringing on a field organizer from National Nurses United, who also has a history of the Bernie campaign. She's very experienced, so will be helping us set up a field operation. There's already a great field operation out there. We've set up student groups on every college campus in the district. We also have a volunteer anchor in virtually every county in the district so far. And why that's important is they can help us organize events on their own without our supervision to get the word out about us, so they can essentially be, the military terms, like force multipliers on the force. What we're moving towards is a model where we'll have a field organizer overseeing someone in every major region of the district, overseeing volunteer efforts everywhere in the district, knocking on doors multiple times in targeted precincts between now and the first votes. And so once that happens, people will not only have heard from us once, they'll have heard from us on almost every major issue that we're campaigning on a couple of times at the door. And that's important because, the traditional campaign model over the last 20 years has been very television heavy, very TV buy, very direct mail heavy. Studies are showing that you're getting very diminished returns for that investment. The only thing that convinces voters to come out and vote these days is some kind of personal contact. Yeah.
What about people with older voters? Like people who aren't village, people who are like, some people with Democratic voters are like those, elderly people. They're not going to see Facebook and stuff like that.
Right.
You
have to knock on their door, and you have to do things like ask them if they need rides, record that information. If they need a ride on election day, you go get them. And that requires a field operation that's really sophisticated.
How are you going to reach them, okay? In other words, how are you going to reach them, like you say, you reach them in certain ways, like you just mentioned.
Right.
How are you going to reach those people like watch TV, they use that old school type of media,
Right.
Okay?
We'll be doing some of those buys, but we're not going to prioritize it as like our major spending because it's just diminishing returns. What we will do though is go to their door and knock on it and talk to them personally. We do it multiple times before.
And call them.
Right. Yeah, and call them. Like you just call them. So, and just to give you an idea of the scope of what we're doing, since April we've had at least one phone bank and one block walk somewhere in the district every week. We're at a mode now we're doing multiple block walks at a time on the same day in multiple parts of the district, and each major population center is having a phone bank. So we're also deploying distributed organizing tools so that if you want to just log on and start calling people, you'll be able to do that. And by doing that, we're allowing people to get in touch one-on-one with a fellow voter, and that's much more effective than an ad.
So I also wanted to mention, every Saturday here in San Antonio, we are doing block walking. Starts at 10 a.m. and you can go to our Facebook page and get that information. And then also, Frankie is doing photo making from his residence every Tuesday. I'm sorry, the time?
6 to 8.
6 to 8.
Right. And we're actually doing a block walk this Saturday at 10 a.m. So talk to me and Tina afterwards.
Yeah.
We can get you signed up. It's
And we
also
can
on our
get you,
Facebook.
yeah.
It's a really powerful way of reaching out. Folks that have tried it once,
You know
Shannon
that.
can talk about it.
You know that. He signs people up to vote.
Oh, good, yeah, you know that.
So he knows, yeah.
And the other thing that you can do is I'm willing to host in my particular neighborhood. I live in Trumpistan. So I will open up my house as headquarters. We will have a barbecue if we need to, and our big campfire in the backyard to start block walking in my neck of the woods, in my neighborhood, to start to introduce Derrick to
I want to do that in my neighborhood.
do it. So offer up your home, offer up your fireplace, and your liquor cabinet, and get the word out.
And the last thing I'll say before I sit down and let y'all talk amongst yourself. One thing, make sure you meet other people here today. If there's somebody that walked in that you didn't know when they walked in, make sure you get to know them before you leave, because that's one of the most powerful things you can do in politics, is get to know your neighbors who agree with you on politics. The other thing I will say is, if you don't do anything else, just take responsibility for your block. Just the people on, even just your side of the street on the block. Just make sure that nobody gets out of your neighborhood before voting happens without knowing who you support, inviting them to get involved with you, and helping them find how to get registered to vote. If you do those things, we can make a huge impact just in your own neighborhood.
And for those of you that have not become a deputy voter registrar, we suggest that you do that as
Yes.
well. And if you are becoming a DVR, I will get you a neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay?
Well, thank y'all for your attention and your presence tonight. It means the world to me. I'm going to stick around for a little bit before we have to take off, but I hope we can pull y'all in. Talk to Katina about donations or volunteer signups. If you want to do something locally in San Antonio, Frankie is our coordinator right now for the time being, and he can help you get involved immediately. So thank y'all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for giving us hope. Thank you for giving us hope. After the
guys-
election, I had no hope.
Well,
No
what y'all
hope.
have done is changing the entire dynamic. So thank you.
So, thank you.